All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video, fantasy hockey weekend preview for week 8 of the NHL season. So today's video, going to be looking at some starts, some streamers that you can add. This is really focused on guys that are pretty much rostered or less than 5% rostered in your general fantasy hockey leagues. And then we'll also be looking at our best bets for the weekend. So we'll be looking at 9 games from Saturday and Sunday. And before we get into the video, be sure you download the FanDuel Canada app, #1 sportsbook in North America. Will be really easy to kind of follow along if you have the sportsbook open with you as I go through all these games, all the best bets, and which players you should be looking at, which matchups you should be targeting. Let's get into the video and break down the weekend slate. All right, so the first game of the day on Saturday, the Tampa Bay Lightning are visiting the Dallas Stars. So this is a Stanley Cup rematch from 2021 or 2020, I believe. Stars and Lightning, obviously some key players still involved in this matchup, but a lot of new faces as well, especially for the Stars. But looking at how these two teams kind of match up against each other, Tampa Bay been an interesting team this year. You have Vasilevsky back in the mix now, been very much focused on offensive heavy team. Defensively, not that great. You know, they're bottom 12 in the league right now in expected goals against. Dallas, on the other hand, has been solid offensively. We're starting to see them score a little bit more. Only had 16 shots in that game against Calgary, but still managed to score 3 goals in that game. But definitely a better defensive team, I would say, than offensive. But both of these teams, top 5 in the NHL in high danger chances created. So some starts I'd be looking at. Obviously, I'm not going to be talking about Jason Robertson or those type of guys in this one. You know you're going to be starting those guys. But Mason Marchment, definitely a guy to continue to start here. You know, playing on that line with Duchesne and Seguin has really proven to be great for Mason Marchment in that sense. You know, his last 5 games played 3 goals and 5 points. And if you look even further back, he continues to be pretty much a point per game producer at that point. Pavelski as well started to kind of take off on that top line. We saw him, he's a little slow to start the year, but now 3 goals and 6 points. His last 5 games played and leads the team in high danger chances over that same time frame as well. Esa Lindell, if you need a defenseman on Saturday or even just for the weekend, I wouldn't hate that as a spot start here. You know, 5% rostered, but leads the defenseman on the team in expected goals for over the last 5 games played. Offensively, when you're looking at this team for defensemen, it's pretty much going to be Esa Lindell or Miro Heiskanen. Heiskanen, obviously the top choice, but Lindell's been carrying his own on the offensive zone as well. So good matchup against Tampa Bay too. And then for the Lightning, there's not really anyone I'd be looking at other than the top 6 here. So Kucherov, Hagel, Point, Stammer, and then Hedman and Sergachev. Those are the guys I'm really looking for in terms of fantasy hockey. And then best bets for myself for this game would be the over 6.5 in this game. I like that bet. Kucherov over his shots on goal. He's probably the guy who's had the highest hit rate in terms of hitting his shots on goal. He just shoots a ton, dominates the shot attempt share on this Tampa Bay Lightning team as well. And then I'm going to continue to ride Mason Marchment point because the guy continues to be really hot. All right, so another game early afternoon on Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, and that's the Rangers taking on the Predators. The Predators already taking the first matchup between these two teams in New York. Now the Rangers travel to Nashville here. But looking at these two teams on paper, you'd actually think Nashville is better. If you look at Corsi percentage, expected goals for, expected goals against, and high danger chances for, Nashville leads all those categories when you're looking at these two teams matching up against each other. So Nashville maybe has a little bit of an upper hand here. Nashville, you know, off of a 6-game win streak, just lost to Minnesota, pretty bad, 5-1, 6-1 loss there. So maybe they're due for some regression here. But looking at some starts, there's definitely some really good streamers you can look at in this game. Both of these teams rank outside the top 15 when it comes to expected goals against. Both teams focus a little bit more offensively, especially Nashville now that they have Andrew Brunette as their new head coach this season. But looking at some guys here on Nashville, Luke Evangelista has actually been fantastic so far, or recently, I will say. 4 points his last 5 games played and 4th on the team in expected goals for. So creating his own offense, which is good to see. And then Tomasino in the same light. Philip Tomasino, another young gun on this Nashville Predators team that's starting to play a little bit more and starting to contribute a little bit more on the offensive end as well. Doesn't have a goal over his last 5 games played, but 3 assists and is 3rd on the team in expected goals for. So if you're looking for a goal scorer here, Tomasino, maybe he can finally find the back of the net there. And then on the Rangers side of things, Lafreniere and Trocheck on this line with Panarin have just elevated their game. Both of them top 3 in expected goals for over the last 5 games played. And then another guy that's maybe a little bit further down the roster, 0% rostered right now. I don't hate this as a spot start either. And that's Jimmy Vesey. 2 goals and 3 points his last 5 games played. Could find the back of the net here. This guy's been playing really well recently. So if you're desperate need of a player to start on Saturday, Vesey could be an option there. And then some best bets. There's a couple bets I like in this one. Rangers money line. I think they bounce back against this Predators team. They've been relatively inconsistent, but I think this is a game that they can maybe win here. I think a lot of people will be favoring Nashville considering they're at home and they're 6-1 their last 7 games played. So I don't blame them, but I'm going to go with the Rangers in that one. And then Trocheck over SOGs in this one. Shots on goal, second on the team in Corsi for over the last 5 games played, and Nashville top 10 in allowing shots to centers this season. So Trocheck, a good start in fantasy, and I'd look at some player props for him too. All right, now starting in to look at the night slate on Saturday, the Islanders taking on the Florida Panthers. This is just a terrible matchup for the Islanders, in my opinion. Florida's starting to play really well here. They're second in the NHL in Corsi for. So Corsi for those who don't know, that's essentially the shot attempt share. So how much of the game essentially you're controlling in the offensive zone. It's a good way to look at it as well. The Islanders are second to last in the NHL in shot attempt share so far this season. They're bottom 6 in expected goals for, bottom 5 in expected goals against. They do create a decent amount of offense in terms of hiding your chances for. They're top 12 in the NHL in that sense, but nothing compares to this Florida team. And you're really, if you watch an Islanders game, the only games they actually do win are the games where Sorokin or Varlamov stand on their head here. It's a perfect example of their last game against the New Jersey Devils. Varlamov played outstanding. But looking at some starts for this game in terms of fantasy hockey, it's really too risky to go outside of anyone on the top 6 for Florida at this rate. I've tried to tell people to stream, Luosterainen or Anton Lundell, but Nick Cousins, I wouldn't really ever tell anyone to start him, but it's just too hard not to look at these top 6 guys. You got Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, Bennett, Barkov, Reinhart. I'd stay away from Rodriguez right now. He's creating a decent amount of offense, but just can't find the back of the net really. And this Florida team hasn't really been able to score a ton of goals recently. They just went off a little bit in the third period against Montreal, but that's Montreal. He had a similar light here against the Islanders. I think it's just better to focus on some of the top 6, some of the top performers on this Florida team too. The one guy I will tell you to start on the Islanders that I think I will continue to tell people to start, and that's Anders Lee. He's 23% rostered in fantasy hockey leagues right now, but if you look at the whole season, really, he leads the team in expected goals for, and that number is starting to contribute on the actual ice now too. 2 goals, 4 points his last 5 games played. Last 5 games leads the Islanders in expected goals for as well. So consistently creating offense, doesn't matter if he's on the top line or the third line. He just played his 700th game in the NHL as well. Didn't notch a goal in that one, so maybe he notches a goal on the weekend on Saturday against this Islanders team that has been very bad defensively. But some bets I'm going to be looking at in this one, Panthers in regulation or -1.5, I think is the right bet here. I would also take a look at the over in this one, and then Matthew Tkachuk, anytime goal scorer. He only has 3 goals on the year, but he's like top 6 in the NHL in expected goals for. He also has a goal in 2 out of the 3 games he's played against the Islanders as a Florida Panther. One of the better games of the Saturday night slate is the Bruins taking on the Leafs on Saturday. Boston traveling to Toronto in this one. These two teams, I would say, very similar if you look at their stats on paper in terms of shot attempt share, expected goals for, but both of these teams have relied on 2 separate things, I'd say. The Leafs rely on their top 6 to score and really make up for their poor defense and sometimes lack of goaltending. And then Boston, in the other sense, play a little bit better defensively, but really have relied on their goaltenders in Swayman and Allmark. Both of them, I would say at this point, Vezina candidates, both been playing fantastic. Swayman just recorded another shutout against the San Jose Sharks. Not saying much, but still, recording any shutout against any NHL team is still a feat to itself. So looking at some starts here, Jake DeBrusk has really started to play a lot better recently. Leads the team in expected goals for the last 5 games played. He's 37% rostered right now. He has 3 goals over his last 5 games played. I think that's a good start in this one. Charlie Coyle continues to be a guy you can start here. He continues to find the back of the net last 5 games played as well. 3 goals in that span. Carlo, honestly, if you're looking for a defenseman in a bangers league setting, I think Brandon Carlo is a pretty solid option here. He leads the team over the last 5 games played in hits and block shots, and the Leafs, they shoot a lot. They're not super physical. Carlo could get a bunch of hits in this game as well. And then on the Leafs side of things, obviously you're starting Nylander, Marner, Matthews, Tavares. I think you could start Tyler Bertuzzi here too. 23% rostered, 3rd on the team in expected goals for over the last 5 games played. So creating a decent amount of offense on that second line now with Tavares and Marner. Some bets I would be looking to place at FanDuel Canada here. Leafs money line, I think they get revenge from the last game that they played against Boston. I think they outplayed them in that one in Boston. Samsonov played really well, but they ended up losing that one in overtime or shootout. Can't remember which one. I like the under in this game as well. And then David Pastrnak to score. He has 6 goals his last 10 games played versus Toronto. His shooting percentage his last 5 games played, less than 5%. This is not a number we consistently see David Pastrnak in. So like Pastrnak to score a goal on Saturday against the Leafs.
All right, boys. Shohei Ohtani, tell me why he's going to be a Toronto Blue Jay.
Out of third country to his arsenal. Very multicultural country. Great lineup. Great pitching staff. He's never played for a team with a good pitching staff. He's going to be a Toronto Blue Jay. I've talked myself into it. He's going to be a Blue Jay.
He looks up to Yusei Kikuchi. They went to the same high school. People do forget that, but plus 700, pretty good odds. There's some other teams still in the running, but it seems like they're down to 3 right now. The Blue Jays are firmly planted in there.
If he doesn't go to the Blue Jays, where's he going?
Chicago Cubs plus 550. They seem like they're going for it all. I don't know why they're plus 550. I don't know why he would go there, but I don't want to see the Dodgers. I hate the Dodgers. They're bums. They spend all the money and they never win. So I'm going to go Chicago Cubs plus 550.
I think there's nothing like going back to an ex, the Los Angeles Angels plus 2,500.
Oh my God.
All right, Battle of Pennsylvania on Saturday. The Flyers taking on the Penguins. Philly traveling to Pittsburgh for this one. Both of these teams, I think Flyers have surprised a lot of people this year. I think they're going to continue to cause some problems in this really tough Metropolitan division. Both of these teams very, very equal when you look at Corsi percentage, but they get it in different ways. Philly, definitely a lot more defensive-minded first. They're top 3 in the NHL in expected goals against and scoring chances allowed. You look at Pittsburgh on the other sense, they're much more offensive-minded here. Top 5 in the NHL in expected goals for and goals for. If you look at the one interesting thing here too, Pittsburgh doesn't really create a ton of high-danger scoring chances. They're just more a volume team in terms of shots on goal and scoring chances, which actually might not work against this Flyers team. So I actually do like the Flyers in this one as an early bet on FanDuel. I'll take Flyers money line against this team. Even the fact that they're on the road here. Looking at some starts and some streamers here. Tyson Forrester, I've talked about him a couple times in some of these videos. I think he's finally starting to contribute and produce on the ice instead of it just be looking at it from an analytical approach here. Continues to have a really high expected goals for. He started to contribute here. I think he has a goal or 2 goals over his last 5 games played and just 1% rostered, playing in that top 6 now as well. Playing decent minutes on the power play as well. And then Cam York, I've talked about him for sure. 2% rostered. If you need a defenseman who's going to contribute, whether it be assists or goal, I think York is a good option here, especially against a Pittsburgh team that's not great defensively and allows a lot of scoring chances too. He also has 11 blocks his last 5 games played, so that's pretty solid if you're thinking about it from a Bangers League perspective there too. Jake Gensel. Jake Gensel is a guy I would definitely try to trade for right now. He has been awesome. Over the last 2 weeks, he's top 5 in expected goals for and shot attempt share across on this Pittsburgh Penguins team. Playing on that top line with Sidney Crosby, he's really starting to find his groove after starting the year on the shelf, and since then, it took him about 2 weeks to get going, and now over the last 2 to 3 weeks, he's been absolutely outstanding. So obviously a guy you're starting, but another guy I'd try to target in a trade right now because I think his numbers will start to correlate with his analytics. And then Drew O'Connor is another guy I'd probably spot start in this one. With Raquel on IR, he's taken the position on the right wing on that second line with Evgeny Malkin and Riley Smith. 3rd on the team in expected goals for over the last 5 games played. A couple points to show for that too. So if you're really in desperate need of a winger here, I think Drew O'Connor is a decent spot start at 0% rostered. Obviously, you can get him in pretty much any league that you're in. Looking at it from a betting standpoint in this one, Philly just lost 2 really tough games against the Devils and the Carolina Hurricanes. Pittsburgh coming off a 2-game road trip. They just beat Tampa Bay. I don't think they played outstanding in that game. They kind of came back and won that one. So I like the Flyers money line in this game as a bet on FanDuel, and I also like Jake Gensel shots on goal in this one. One of the last games on Saturday night is between the Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames. 10 p.m. Eastern, so late start here. Calgary's starting to look a lot better than they did at the beginning of the season. Obviously, they just traded Nikita Zadorov to Vancouver, so this will be an interesting matchup considering it'll probably be Zadorov's first game as a Canuck, which will be really interesting to see there. Both of these teams pretty even, I'd say, on paper. Obviously, Vancouver had a really hot start to the year. Starting to lose a couple games here, lost to San Jose, lost to Colorado, lost to Vegas. Games I think some people expected them to lose, but continue to beat up on the bad teams. So this I think, will be a good test for them because Calgary was a bad team at the beginning of the year, but now they're kind of going like this. So starting to become a team that's probably middle of the pack in that Western Conference and could make the playoffs. But looking at some starts here, Brock Besser, man, if you drafted Brock Besser, you're very smart. Definitely not a guy that was on my radar at the beginning of the year, but now leads the NHL in goals right now with 17 and 4 goals over his last 5 games played. Kuzmenko now back in the lineup. Start to put him back in your lineup if you had him on IR, or if he's for some reason or whatever on your waiver wire. I would definitely pick him up. Scored the only goal in that 4-1 loss to Vegas the other night. And then for Calgary, Jonathan Huberdeau finally back up to what we've kind of expected to see him. Now 8 points his last 10 games played. He's 48% rostered now. He was in my must-add 2 weeks ago. I think he was back down to like 30% rostered. So good to see people are starting to believe in Huberdeau again as he starts to produce on this line. And I think it really is just the line he's playing on with Michael Backlund and Blake Coleman. Backlund now the new captain on this team, has some new energy. And even last year with Backlund and Coleman on the same line, they were playing fantastic. Throw Huberdeau on there. I think this just adds another offensive edge to this line. And then Kadri, I think, is starting to play a lot better here. Point per game over his last 10 versus Vancouver as well. So obviously a great start there if you're trying to figure out between some of your centers who you're going to start, I think Kadri would be a pretty good start in this game. Some bets I'm going to be taking this one, Canucks money line, and then Elias Peterson to score a goal. 7 goals his last 10 games played versus Calgary. So obviously the trend is there. That's definitely a player prop I'd look at on Saturday night. All right, one game to touch on Sunday. The Jackets taking on the Boston Bruins. The Bruins playing at home here. I think this is a great opportunity if you have the ability to pick someone up on Boston for the weekend, considering they play 2 games here. Obviously a little bit of a tougher game against the Leafs on Saturday, but this is a great matchup on Sunday for the Boston Bruins. And guys I'd be looking at here, Jake DeBrusk, Charlie Coyle, even JVR, I don't think it's terrible. Trent Frederick, if you're in a really deep league. And like I mentioned before, Brandon Carlo, Matt Grzelcyk as well. I don't think those guys are terrible options. On the Columbus side of things, Kirill Marchenko is starting to score a lot, I would say. Fantilli's starting to play a lot better too, playing on that line with Patrick Laine. I think it's kind of reinvigorated Patrick Laine in a certain sense. He looks a little bit better since being that healthy scratch a couple weeks ago there. Zach Werenski, another guy I'd look at starting. Ivan Provorov. There's a lot of options in this game, but I would definitely focus more on the Boston side of things, and I'd continue to look at Boston player props as well for this game. All right, last game we're going to be breaking down for the weekend preview. Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, probably one of the best games of the weekend, and that's the Colorado Avalanche taking on the Los Angeles Kings here. The Kings have been absolutely on a heater in November. Now we start in December. We'll see if they'll be able to continue this heater, but looking at them on paper, they're top 5 in pretty much every category you want your team to be top 5 in. Top 5 in Corsi for percentage, second in expected goals for, second in expected goals against, and then just outside the top 5 in high danger chances created per game. I like the Kings in this one. I think, this is a good revenge spot, if you want to call it, for the Kings after they lost their season opener to Colorado 5-2. Some starts in this one. Nichushkin, man, this guy, obviously, if he's not going to be on your waiver wire anymore, but he was like 50% rostered, I want to say a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. Now he's up to 85% rostered in Yahoo Fantasy Hockey Leagues. And it totally makes sense. He scores almost every game, or he gets a point pretty much every game. Playing on that top line with Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon, it's hard not to, I would say. The offense essentially runs all through them. And like Andrei Svechnikov, he's very similar in that sense. He gets a lot of hits, so he's even valuable in bangers leagues as well. 3 goals and 6 points over his last 5 games played. And then a guy I would consider starting for on the weekend, because Colorado does play on Saturday against Anaheim. Ross Colton, 24% rostered. On that third line, he's actually been producing at a pretty decent rate. I will give him credit there. Him and Miles Wood, this is a really good combo, I would say, playing on a line together. He has 3 points his last 5 games played, a 4th on the team in expected goals for over the last 5 games and 10 games played. So creating a lot of offense, even if it is on that third line. And if you're in a really deep league, 24% rostered, obviously people are starting to pay attention to him a little bit. And then on the LA side of things, this is Quinton Byfield's breakout season. It's very clear now. Leads the team in high danger chances for the last 5 games played and expected goals for. Playing on that top line with Kopitar and Kempe, I think has really helped him as well. Trevor Moore continues to be an absolute force, 4 goals and 6 points his last 5 games played. And then on the defensive side of things, I don't think this guy's on a ton of people's radars, but I think he might be a pickup. Could be in my must-add next week or maybe the week after that if we start to see a little bit more production from him. But that's Jordan Spence. He's only 1 point behind Drew Doughty in terms of points this season, but he leads the team in expected goals for and high danger chances amongst defensemen. So I think that's really important when you're looking at picking up fantasy hockey defensemen. He's not going to contribute a ton on the Bangers League side of things, but definitely a guy you could keep in your mind if you're looking for someone to contribute on the points aspect, if you're in standard scoring for fantasy hockey. Some FanDuel bets I'm going to be looking at in this one. Honestly, Anze Kopitar under shots on goal. His shot attempt share on the team over the last 5 games played is like 14th or 13th on the team, so that's really low. And he hasn't had a ton of success against Colorado across his career. I do like the Kings, though, as I mentioned before, to kind of a revenge win, that comeback win after they lost the season opener in Colorado. I think they're playing a lot better than Colorado is right now, so I take the Los Angeles Kings on the money line to close out your weekend on Sunday night. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the Fantasy Hockey Weekend Preview for Week 8. Be sure to download the FanDuel Canada app, lock in all those bets I was talking about throughout the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week for Must Add.